Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. My name is Pengy and today we're going to be having a little story time about the first two VGC Regional Championships of 2022. In case you don't know, I'm a competitive Pokemon VGC player. I started playing at the very end of 2019 with the release of Sword and Shield, and I set a goal to reach Worlds that season, and then COVID happened. Technically speaking though, the current season is still the same season, so I'm being true to that goal and I'm pursuing my Worlds invite. It's a lot harder now since we don't have any locals to pick up points at, and a lot of the people who qualify for Worlds get about half of their points at locals. So I'm going to need to pick up 367 of my 400 points from stacked major tournaments. The season has resumed now, and I wanted to take some time to tell you all about the first two regionals of 2022. This video is going to have some team report-y elements in it, but I'm doing a full in-depth team report with Adi over on his channel, so this video is going to be talking more about the experiences and the games as opposed to going in depth on the team and the way it functions. So if you want to know more about that, definitely check out the video on Adi's channel, which should be out by the time this goes live, and if not, probably a day or two after. So, on screen right now, I have the wrong version of the team. I have the team I brought to Salt Lake City. So basically, just a quick little rundown. Series 12 was really weird for me. I did really well in Series 10. Series 11 was kind of meh. And then Series 12 started horribly. I could not find a team that I vibed with for well over a month. And then I finally decided to try out this. I tried out like Solgaleo Kyogre. I tried out random stuff like Ho-Oh Zekrom. Some Eternatus Yveltal stuff, and I decided to finally go, alright, you know what, I'll try Swordfish. Everyone's using Swordfish, we'll use a good old Kyogre Zacian team. But what I did was I decided to sort of build my own variant of the team, as opposed to take one of the established versions that was running around. Sableye was using one, Joe was using one, so a lot of different variations were running around. I decided to build my own though, so I centered it around the Assault Vest Kyogre. This thing is an absolute menace. Kyogre has a really high special attack stat, so it doesn't really need the Mystic Water or the Life Orb to dish out huge amounts of damage. So you can invest in that Assault Vest to make it obscenely bulky on the special side, and still really be firing off super powerful max moves, max geysers, max lightnings, all of that fun stuff. You can dish out tons of damage while focusing more on survivability, and that's really the name of the game with a lot of these Pokemon. Kyogre is running Thunder, Water Spout, Ice Beam, and Origin Pulse, the Assault Vest, of course, precluding it from running status moves. And its job is to oftentimes max, but doesn't necessarily have to. It doesn't have to come to every game, but when it does come, it's usually going to be the big damage dealer. Zapdos is here. Most Zapdos will be running a Life Orb these days. Safety Goggles is a less important item now with Venusaur kind of falling off, but I really like this variant. You drop the Heat Wave, so you don't really have the fire coverage, but you do have the ability to 2-hit KO most of the things that the Life Orb variant would 2-hit KO with Hurricane and Thunderbolt. The only major one you miss is Citrus Berry and Incineroar, which is also kind of out of the meta now. Like, nobody uses it. It's just not a very good item for Incineroar compared to all of the other options that it could be running. So this Zapdos, it's pretty bulky, it's not max speed, but it can provide really good support options with the Eerie Impulse. It can provide a really solid end game, especially in situations where like my main end game plan got crit or something. I can sort of fall back on Roost Eerie Impulse spam and sort of like chipping my opponent down while just making sure that I stay alive. So Zapdos is really great also at just Dynamaxing and dishing out decent damage while boosting up airstreams for things like Zacian, things like Kyogre. So a lot of different things that this Zapdos can do. It's a little bit less key to the team than it was about a month ago when the team was first conceptualized, but it's still a very, very important Pokemon for this team. Incineroar is very standard. I'm running a little bit of speed investment, which allows me to outspeed most of the slow Incineroars, which is kind of nice. Flare Blitz, Parting Shot, Fake Out, Darkest Lariat, super standard. His job is to mainly switch in, Intimidate, get back out, get more Intimidates going. Parting Shot's neat. It can Dynamax in certain situations. There's like some Calyrex Shadow Zacian teams where like Incin's not a terrible max into, but it's never really the main plan. Generally, this guy is there to enable the others and just pivot in and out and try to help me out with positioning. Grimmsnarl, also a very standard set, running Spirit Break, Reflect, Light Screen, and Thunder Wave. A very, very standard sort of set there. There is a lot of debate going on recently about the benefits of Thunder Wave versus Scary Face. Scary Face dropping the speed by 2 stages, which is effectively the same as the speed control you get from Thunder Wave, except it's not permanent. It does obviously go away if the Pokemon is switched out. The upside, though, is that it doesn't miss, and it can hit the electric types in the format, like a Regieleki or Thundurus. So personally, I think Thunder Wave is really, really important because there is one specific matchup that we'll talk about a little bit later where I really need the paralysis on my side. It's not because I'm at a super disadvantage, but I guess I'll spoil it now. Basically, against Solgaleo, there are certain Solgaleo leads where I need to just Thunder Wave the entire team, and unless I get really unlucky, I'll be in a really good spot. I can drag the game out pretty long, give my opponent lots of chances to be fully paralyzed, and as long as I don't get super unlucky, I'm in a pretty favorable spot to win from there. That's the main reason I don't want Scary Face. The other reason also for Solgaleo is that I struggle with the Solgaleo matchup a little bit, and Scary Face doesn't hit Solgaleo. It has Full Metal Body, which prevents it from dropping its stats. And then the third main reason is that I really don't like the ability for Zacians to just switch out of the Scary Face drop. Yeah, I mean, Zacian is a very pivotal Pokemon anyway, so I'm not a huge fan of that either. But I do very much understand the benefits of Scary Face, just not for me, not on this team. Zacian for Salt Lake City was a very standard set, 3 attacks, protect, very, very bulky. You know, people have been moving more and more towards bulk as the format evolves. 252 is not a good Zacian to run. If you run 0 defense investment, you die to, I think, 6 or 7 hits that would not kill you otherwise. More if you include some of the more niche, non-meta ones. So there's a lot of reason to run bulk in your Zacians. The only reason to run max speed Zacian really is if you're running Imprison, which is a very best of 1-y thing. You can put it on best of 3 teams. A couple of top players have done that in the last 2 regionals, but they haven't done particularly well with it. So I would not recommend using Imprison. I would not recommend using max speed on your Zacian. This speed tier does outspeed Regieleki at +1, which is very, very nice. I can max Airstream while protecting my Zacian from potential Electro Web, and then I can use it to just knock out the Regieleki. I like this speed tier quite a lot. Rillaboom! Pretty standard Rillaboom 2, with the exception that it is not Assault Vest. Obviously, my Assault Vest is on my Kyogre, so I can't use it on the Rillaboom. People do tend to prefer the Assault Vest variant of the Rillaboom. I really like Miracle Seed, though. I think Miracle Seed's really, really neat. There's a lot of people who are running hyper bulky Kyogres that won't die to Grassy Glide from an Assault Vest Rillaboom these days. And then also with Grassy Seed, Miracle Seed, there's a lot of stuff that I can actually do that's kind of neat. Generally speaking, Grassy Glide plus Behemoth Blade from Zacian Rillaboom will KO an opposing Zacian, unless it's one very specific Zacian spread that is extremely uncommon. I think it's actually Adi's. It was designed to survive Ditto's Behemoth Blade. So, like, it doesn't kill that one. But, other than that, it basically kills all of them. There's some hyper bulky ones that are a little more standard where it's a roll, but that's kind of neat. I really like that I can max my Rillaboom and one-hit KO Mimikyu through Disguise even after an Intimidate, unless the Mimikyu is, like, max HP, max defense, bold. So, there's a lot of cool stuff about this Rillaboom. I like it a lot. And yeah, that's kind of the team. So I have my notebook over here, so let's talk about Salt Lake City. All right, so first of all, we need to cover story time, travel to Salt Lake City. This is going to be important for context for the actual tournament, but also just because this was insane. I was flying out at 7 in the morning. It's about a 5-hour flight. It was a direct flight, which was nice. And Philadelphia usually doesn't have super long lines at the airport. So I was like, all right, I'll show up at 5, 2 hours early. That's what's recommended. For this early in the morning, I should probably get through in about 10 minutes, but I'm going to be safe. So I show up. There was a 2-hour line at security. It was very weird. So let me visualize it for you guys. The security line is like here, right? And then you have the queue area that's going like this. It's designed to hold a few hundred people. You finish up with the queue area. The line goes out here, down the entire hallway, then turns left, down an even longer hallway, all the way to the end, turns back around, and then goes all the way back down to the other end of the hallway again. It must have been at least 2,000 to 3,000 people in line. I don't know how many flights were going. It was insane. Meanwhile, the little board is like 15 to 20 minutes. Yeah, okay, bros. So I stand in the line for about an hour, and it's at that point where I realize I've gone down the hallway once, and I haven't even come back or gone through the other hall. So at this point, I'm like, I'm not making my flight. This is like at least a 2-hour line, probably longer. At this point, I realize I'm not going to make it if I stand in line here. I'm going to YOLO it. I'm going to gut out of line, and I'm going to try to find an airport employee. Because I'm from Europe, and in Europe, generally, they will help you. What I have learned from my time in the US is that nobody gives a shit, and they won't help you. But I thought I would try. So anyway, I went and I talked to this guy, and I was like, hey, look, this is my situation. I've been in the line for an hour. My flight's going to start boarding in about 15 minutes. Is there anything you can do to help? He's like, it's not my problem. I'm like, yeah, okay, I like, fair enough. It's not your job, but like, think you could point me in the direction of somebody who might be able to help me? Guy just like stares into my face for like 5 seconds, says nothing, and then just turns around and leaves. I'm like, oh, cool, that's super nice of you. All right. So I decided to try my hand at the other terminal. I sprint down to the other terminal, and lo and behold, the security line is significantly shorter, but still looks like it's about a half hour, and my flight's 5 minutes out from boarding at this point. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to have to be the guy that I never want to be, the guy that is my nightmare scenario. I have to ask everyone in front of me if I can cut in line. So I asked the guy in front of me, and he immediately shuts it down. He's just like, we all have flights to catch. I'm like, okay, all right, fair enough. And then he leaves 5 minutes later, so he just prevented me from moving forward and then left 5 minutes later. Everyone else is really nice. They let me through. He just killed 5 minutes of my very, very precious time for no reason, I guess. So I get to the front of the line. Everyone lets me through. They're very, very nice. And then there's one guy in front of me going through, or about to go through the security machine, and I'm like, all right, cool. So I chill. The man does not empty his pockets, and he has like, I don't even know what he had like industrial magnets in his pockets or something. He goes through and breaks the machine. So not only are they spending like 2-3 minutes with him unloading all of his pockets, at this point it's like 10 minutes past boarding time for my flight, and they have to recalibrate the machine, and I'm standing there for like 5 minutes waiting for this machine to be done, and I'm like, hey, TSA guy, look, my flight's been boarding for like 10-15 minutes. Is there any chance you could just like give me a pat down or like put me through one of the other machines or something? And he just turns to me and goes, this is why you arrived 2 hours early. I'm like, I did arrive 2 hours early. The line at the other terminal is like 2 hours long. And he's like, no, it's not. Stop lying. And he just leaves. I'm like, okay, why is everyone so rude today? So they fix the machine. I get through, and I sprint down to gate E17, which is on the other side of the airport. For those who don't know Philly Airport, it's very long and very narrow. So I had to sprint well over a kilometer from one end of the airport to the other. I finally get there. My gate wasn't E17, my seat was E17, my gate was D17. So now I have to sprint all the way back to the other side of the airport. My Switch falls out of my bag at one point. Somebody like yells at me that I dropped something. That would have been good, showing up without my Switch to a regional. I finally get there. The only reason I made it to this flight is because A, Necro was on the plane texting me that like, oh yeah, you might still be able to make it, which was like convincing me to actually keep going. And second of all, one lady was having so many issues with her QR code ticket that she was holding up the plane. So thank you to random lady for allowing me to get on this flight. I get on the plane. At this point, I'm like, I'm not very in shape, as you might be able to assume, given that I am a gamer. And I'm just like in the front of the airplane, just like can't speak, like my sweat dripping down my face, just like like flight attendant lady's just like, are you all right, sir? And I'm just like, water, please, water. Necra knew that I was on the same flight as she was, so she was kind enough to actually buy me a cold Starbucks drink, so that helped me out a lot. But my plan, I'd only slept for 1 hour the night before because it was such an early flight and I couldn't sleep. And then because my adrenaline was so high, I couldn't sleep on the plane, which was my plan. So I got maybe 1.5 hours of sleep on the 5-hour plane ride. And then I showed up. And basically, Friday was cool. I got to meet a lot of people. Like, I saw and just like chatted with a lot of people who I've known from online. Like, I went to a few events before COVID, but I didn't really know that many people. And the people that I knew kind of had their own cliques, so I didn't really meet that many people in like the greater community. So it's been really, really cool to be able to meet all these people that I've spent a lot of time with online. People that I've played against a lot in things like High Roller Draft League. I talked with Cortex quite a lot. Like, he's been a bit of a, I wouldn't call him a rival in High Roller because we don't play that much, but like he's been appear in that league, which has been really, really cool. And we've matched against each other in team league tournaments where like we're on opposite sides but like not playing each other. It's like I am adjacent to Cortex a lot, even though we're not playing much. So it was cool to meet Cortex, chat with him a bunch. Cool to see all my friends who I did meet before COVID. It was just a really nice experience to be there on Friday and just like chat and hang out. But I was like, all right, I'm going to go to bed at 9. I'm going to go to bed really early. I didn't sleep last night. I barely got any sleep on the plane. I'm going to go to bed at 9. I'm going to wake up super early, and I'm going to be, like, really well rested. So I went to bed at 9, and then I woke up at 10:30, and I don't know why. I woke up an hour and a half later, and then I could not sleep until 3 in the morning. So I slept from 3 till about 6, which is when I had to wake up to get to the frickin' venue in time. So at this point, I'm running on, what, like 8 hours of sleep from the last 2 nights combined going into the first in-person major of 2022. Not a great situation to be in. But, yeah, honestly, it didn't affect my play that much. But, let's talk about the games. Let's talk about the games a little bit. I ran into some really cool stuff, and I want to tell you guys about it. So, round 1, I played against Jacob Giles. This is a guy who I don't know why I recognized his name, but we talked a little bit. He's never been to tournaments, but he's like reasonably high on the showdown ladder. He wouldn't tell me what his username was. But he brought a Sol Galeo Spectrier team with Kyogre. Now, this was, on paper, a terrible matchup for me. I don't like Policy Sol Galeo. I don't like Ogre with Sol Galeo because it's often Calm Mind. In this case, it wasn't. This guy went hyper bulky with like good offensive mons. Kind of the similar concept to my team, except for like he had the weakness Policy Sol Galeo. He also had an Assault Vest Kyogre. And he had a really, really, really neat trick up his sleeve, which didn't actually come into play in our match because he got fully paralyzed on the turn he wanted to do it. But he had an Araquanid with entrainment. So the idea was Araquanid's ability is Water Bubble, and Water Bubble does a bunch of random stuff. It increases the damage of water type moves, which is the most important thing for this little interaction. And he wanted to use entrainment to get Water Bubble onto Kyogre, which would then get the stab boost, the rain boost, and the Water Bubble boost towards its max Kaisers. Which is a scary amount of damage. I just remember him coming up to me after like round 3 or something when we saw each other in the venue, and he was like, hey man, I got it to work. I got entrainment on Kyogre, and then it one-shotted an Assault Vest Rillaboom with a water move. I was like, yes, dude, I love it. I love random stuff like that. It was a 2-0 win for me, but it was really yikes. Game 1, I led with a bit of a YOLO team lead. I went with Grimmsnarl Kyogre into Solgaleo Spectrier. My idea was I'm just going to, I knew it was going to have Wild Charge. Solgaleo tends to carry Wild Charge for the Kyogre. But I was like, all right, I'm going to use Thunder Wave on the Spectrier, so the Solgaleo is faster. Then he's going to Bulldoze after the Solgaleo moves, so he's not going to get the weakness policy turn 1, and I can play around it. And then the Spectrier was Scarfed, and it was still the fastest thing on the field. So that didn't work out very well. But I did learn. I didn't realize this going into the tournament because I didn't prep the lines super hard for Salt Lake City. I didn't realize that Kyogre always lives a +2 max lightning from Solgaleo if the Kyogre is maxed. So Kyogre's a good Pokemon. Yeah, so we ended up winning 2-0 against Jacob. Good set. Pretty cool. Round 2 was a little weird. I showed up and my opponent was late. So basically your opponent has 10 minutes to show up after the matches officially begin. So if they show up, I think 5 minutes late, they get a game loss. So they start 0-1. And then if they show up 10 minutes late, they lose the set. This guy showed up not quite late enough for a game loss. He's like rolled up, I think 3 or 4 minutes after the match started, out of breath. I think he'd been out like smoking or something, I don't know, and just missed the call. So he rolled up and he's like, yeah, man, I was late to my last match and I had a game loss. So he was laughing about it. But I was thinking, okay, so he had a game loss in game 1 or in round 1 and he still won. So that means he won 2-0. So I was thinking he's pretty decent. He's got to be pretty decent. I go into team preview. The guy is running Centiskorch and Ribombee. So my first thought is, oh, he's got to be pretty good. And my second thought is, oh dear God, what's a good player doing with these mons? Like there's something that he's planning to do and I don't know what. Now, Centiskorch is not an unused Pokemon. There's a couple people who like to use it. Generally speaking, it's considered kind of just like bad Charizard because, you know, it doesn't do as much residual damage at like the Gmax move. Centiferno doesn't do quite as much as Wildfire, but it does have the trapping effect, so it's kind of neat. They're both double weak to rock, so you don't really get that defensive advantage on running Centiskorch. You still have that big weakness, and you're a bit slower. I don't know. I think Centiskorch is more one of the Pokemon that I'd put in the tier of usable but kind of why. So if you really like Centiskorch and you like running off-meta stuff, you can use Centiskorch and you can do pretty well with it. This 6 actually got CP. It got top 32 at Salt Lake City. Not this guy, but somebody else running the same team. So I assume they built it together. And yeah, basically, game 1 was really weird. So he crit my max Zapdos with Centiskorch, and then he lived a Water Spout for my Kyogre on 2 HP and revenge killed me with max Overgrowth. So I'm sitting there with my Zacian on the field getting intimidated over and over, thinking, all right, game 1 is over. Like, this guy, he's definitely got Zacian in the back. His restricted's Zacian Palkia. So I mean, he's 99% got Zacian, 1% got Palkia. They're both going to win in the game. I'm just going to play this out for information. You know, if I can, a lot of people will not think about the informational part of the game, especially in early rounds of Swiss. So you can get a little bit of extra information by sticking it out, even if you know you're going to lose. And you can be very careful about what you're using moves that you've already shown them. So you're not giving out more information yourself. And then suddenly, it became clear as my Zapdos, which did survive the crit and used Roost to survive continually. My Zapdos picked off the Grimmsnarl, or my Zacian did, one of the two. I picked up the Centiskorch. The Incin's coming back in. I'm at -3, and then the final Pokemon comes out, and the man brought back Ribombee instead of a restricted. So he just loses. It was a very weird game. I felt a little bad because he just wins if he has either restricted, and then he just brought Ribombee. It was a really weird Ribombee too. Somebody wrote an article on one of the meta websites about like analyzing the teams, and like they did like a brief little paragraph about the Ribombee on this team because it did get top 32, and they were like, it was funny because like their analysis was completely wrong. They got every move on the Ribombee set wrong except for Moonblast. But my opinion was like, that's super fair because none of the moves on the Ribombee made sense. It was like Charm, but it's slower than Zacian, Ally Switch, Helping Hand, and like Moonblast. So I didn't understand. I did win that set 2-0 as well. Really neat team though, and the fact that it got CP and got top 32 does show that it is a usable team. So shout outs to the builders of that one. Next up was Dewobblefett, a guy who is pretty well known, very, very good player, got top 12 in Players Cup Global Finals for Players Cup 3 or 4, I can't remember which. And yeah, I mean, he's a very, very knowledgeable guy. He's basically the human encyclopedia of Pokemon. He's a walking Cerebi, if you will, specifically when it comes to weird interactions of mechanics. He's a cool dude. Wobblefett is one of those people who, like, the community as a whole is lucky to have that repository of information in human form. He brought a Palkia Zacian team, one of the better Pokemon duos right now. That's not, the big, Rinya Sun or Swordfish. I think Zacian Palkia is a little bit more reliable than Ice Rider Palkia, even though Ice Rider Palkia is a lot more common. So, pretty cool. This was a weird one. Game number 2, he won off a crit, which I actually feel pretty good about because game number 1, I won off of a much longer series of bullshit. Basically, the situation at the end was I had Zapdos at half and full HP Kyogre, and he had full HP Zacian, half HP Paralyzed Incin, and a full HP Amoonguss in the back. So he uses Play Rough on he switches Incin out to Amoonguss. He uses Play Rough on my Zapdos, KOs my Zapdos, gets staticked on the Zacian. I double connect with Origin Pulse, which does 75% to Zacian and 25% to Amoonguss. So at this point, I go, okay, super obvious Protect Spore for him, but my only outs here are to freeze or to crit with Ice Beam on the Amoonguss. So he protects, I use Ice Beam on the Amoonguss, it does 50% and does not get any RNG. So I get Spored. And then I'm like, all right, let's see. I'm faster than the Zacian now because of the static. So if I get a turn 1 wake up, like after 1 turn of sleep, I will outspeed, and if I double connect the Origin Pulse, maybe. So he doubles into me on the sleep turn with Play Rough and Giga Drain. I live on 19 HP, and then I wake up and get the double KO. Then the Incin comes in, but because he did so much damage to me, if he fakes me out, I'm dead. But I get full paralysis on the fake out and connect the Origin Pulse and win. It was very dumb. It was very, very dumb, but I did get that win. And then game 3, I kind of just won turn 1. I went for a really big mind game on turn 1 of game 3, and it paid off. So I beat Wobbuffet 2-1. Now, round 4 was really awkward. I had what I looked at as a free win, but I was super tired and super hungry because it was right before lunch break. Game 1, I 4-0'd him. Game 2, I had basically the inverse of the Wobbuffet game 1, where I just had, essentially the situation was I had Zapdos at full, and he had like 35%, a little less, like 30% Zacian. So I had, I calced it afterwards. I had a 68, like 75% roll on the Zacian with Thunderbolt. If that hits, I win. If I paralyze 10%, I win. If I get static para 30%, I win. If he misses Play Rough, I win. And none of that happened, so I lost. Little bit unfortunate. And then game 3, I got into like a free win position and then just clicked into a max guard that I knew was going to be a max guard for no reason. Like, it was very bad. It was an ultra throw, so I got really, really, really tilted after that. I lost 1-2, but we had a lunch break, which saved me, and I was tilted, but I wasn't as tilted as Andrew Ding. I love Andrew Ding. We played StarCraft together. He's a good dude, but he had to play against Pikachu Butterfree on stream, and he got hacked by Sleep Powder spam. So he was more upset than I was, and after lunch break, I think I was not tilted anymore, and he was still very tilted. So we had an interesting match. I don't think he had much of a matchup into me, honestly. He was running a hyper-offensive Dialga team, and I identified that as long as I got rid of the Grimmsnarl, he didn't have much of a win condition into my Ogre. So I just maxed my Ogre 3 times. Game 2, he got me with Imprisoned Zacian because I knew most of the things on his team, but I don't think he showed that in the stream set, so I didn't know about it. So he got me with Imprison, but the other 2 games I just maxed Ogre in late game and just kind of swept him. So I beat Andrew Ding. Then I played against Aaron Trailer, and unfortunately, I think my team has a really good mirror into other opposing Swordfish. Not as good as Aaron's. Aaron's Kartana was to win the Swordfish mirror, so I had very little to do into the Kartana. I got a little bit unlucky in that set. But I honestly don't think it really mattered. Like, he just had a way better matchup than me. And, like, that team was very, 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 very difficult for me to play into. I had a lot of trouble with Indeedee this tournament in general, and, like, Indeedee Kartana together was a lot of, was big issues. So, I lost 2-0 to Aaron Trailer. Not much to say about that one. So, at this point, I'm 4-2, going up against Iron Man, Hayden Shung. Or Shung? I can't read my own writing. My writing's very bad. Like, good luck reading this. But yeah. He was running an old school Sun with Venusaur. Venusaur's kind of fallen off, so interesting that he was running that. And he was also running max speed Groudon, which is really rare. But it also means that you don't have a lot of bulk, so this match, I think, actually came down to building decisions on his part. I think he lost it in the builder. He had Trick Lagging Tail on Grimmsnarl, and I think he wins if it's Trick Iron Ball. I think Iron Ball is infinitely better than Lagging Tail. First of all, it allows your Groudon to hit flying Pokemon with Precipice Blades. That's kind of cool. But more importantly, Iron Ball affects your speed. It halves your speed. Lagging Tail affects your priority. So dynamic speed means that the Iron Ball will take effect immediately in turn 1 if you use it turn 1. The fact that Lagging Tail does not directly affect your speed means that it won't take effect until turn 2. So every single game he maxes Charizard turn 1, and every single game I use Thunder Wave and Eerie Impulse into the Charizard, and it just kind of worked. Not much to say about that. I honestly don't remember what lost me game 2. But yeah, I mean, there wasn't too much to say there. If it was Iron Ball, I'd have to play the matchup super differently, and I don't know if I'd have a great matchup into it. But as it turned out, that one went pretty okay. So at this point, I was actually guaranteed CP, but I didn't know because I'm very bad at judging resistance because online tournaments don't use resistance because it's usually just X2 cut, like a clean X2 cut. So I was very worried at this point because I knew that Andrew Ding had dropped at 3-3. Wobblefett, I think, had just lost a set. A lot of the people that I'd played against were doing pretty poorly. Or not a lot of them, but like a couple of them, and I didn't know about the others. So I was really worried that I was going to bubble out of CP if I didn't win, and I had to play Animus, who is one of the best players in America. Animus had I had a good matchup into Animus, but I didn't know. So I went into the tournament with a very stubborn view on Yveltal, where basically I thought, okay, Life Orb Yveltal does not KO bulky Zacian with Max Flare, so what's the point of running Life Orb? And because of that, I don't think good players will run Life Orb Yveltal, and because of that, I assumed it was AV Yveltal and Life Orb Eliki. There was this long flowchart of like wrong thoughts that led me to the assessment that Animus would not run Life Orb Yveltal. So I went into game 1 and just assumed it was AV and just instantly lost. And then game 2 I lost to a crit. So not great. But at the end of the tournament, I ended up placing 26th. I got 60 championship points from that. A top 32 performance, which was very, very nice. I was super happy with that. That was my goal going in. I didn't prep super hard in the direct run-up to Salt Lake because I didn't want to risk burning out with 2 regionals in a row. And what did end up happening is that the meta accelerated really hard in the run-up to Salt Lake. So there was a lot of things that kind of caught me slightly off guard. I didn't have super clean lines into a lot of the teams that I played against. So at the end of the day, 5-3 is pretty good. It's also the first time I've picked up CP from a regional. I bubbled CP in Collinsville, and in Dallas, I was super new and didn't know what I was doing. So at the end of the day, I was really, really happy with that. It was a great tournament. I met a lot of really cool people, and it sort of boosted my confidence for Liverpool quite substantially. So I decided basically, all right, I'm going to cut Liverpool. I only have 2 days to prep for Liverpool. That's fine. I decided I was going to put in as much time as feasibly possible, and I was going to cut Liverpool. So I put together this ultimate dream team of people. I have sort of my core group that I practice with, which is people like Chalky, Necra, Gabby, the Apprentice guys, Sableye, Turtlemania, and then I also put together another group, which was Blub, Beastmiffy, Catfishy. Sounds like a Dr. Seuss poem, but really, really good players. And then I also reached out to a ton of top players to play sets with, just to run some lines. So people like Cortex, Animus, JoyoX9, Adi, really, really good players were just down to play some games with me, which was awesome. So initially we were considering building a new team, but I basically ended up saying, you know what, guys, I don't think 2 days is enough time for me to get lines down on a new team. Like, I'm not super comfortable with this. We spent about 4 hours on it, see if we came up with something super cool. And then I was like, nah, okay, I just want to go back to the old team, work on lines predominantly, and like see if we can make some changes. So we did make some changes. First of all, we changed Ice Beam to Hyper Beam on Kyogre. This was something that I already considered going into Salt Lake City. I actually had this version of the Kyogre made as well. Like, I'd caught it, I'd like hyper trained it, I'd given it all the IVs or all the EVs, and I had it in my box ready to go. So I was like, I wasn't sure which one I was bringing to Salt Lake City, but I decided I wanted the Ice Beam one specifically because it gave me a very, very good line into Whimsicott Sun. But with Rinnia Sun taking over and winning the tournament and also getting top 4, I figured Whimsicott Sun is super dead. Anybody who wants to run Sun is going to run Rinnia Sun, which is the Assault Vest Groudon, the Zard, the Gastrodon, the one that Joe and Chongjun won. Did well with. Chongjun won the event, Joe got top 4. So that was the first change. Hyper Beam gives me a better line into that. It does really well into Gastrodon. It does okay into Charizard to counteract the max airstreams. It's a very, very nice thing to have in general. Surprise Hyper Beams are really, really good into even some things like Thundurus, for example. If you can read that Thundurus is going to click Max Lightning, you can use Max Strike. It'll get a Defiant boost, but then you're faster and you just KO it the next turn before it attacks. Like, there's a lot of times where a Max Strike can be the difference between winning and losing, and Kyogre really likes having that ability. Also, fun fact, against most Zacians, Max Strike will break Substitute. So if they use Substitute, if you read Substitute, you can Max Strike it, break the sub, drop the speed, and then do it again, drop the speed again, and then when your max is over, you're faster, which is also a fun little thing you can do. I changed Darkest Lariat to Throat Chop on Incineroar. This is mostly just because my Incin is still faster than most of the Incins I run into. You know, offensively, I have Sacred Sword, so I don't really need Zacian, or I don't need Incin to be ignoring defense boosts, really. And Throat Chop is just really, really nice. You know, it didn't come into play at all, honestly, but, like, having the option is nice. It does almost the same amount of damage as Darkest Lariat, unless we're talking about defense boosts. So, it's pretty good. It still KOs Calyrex Shadow Rider, obviously, so I like that change. I actually don't know why more people aren't running Throat Chop, especially on the faster Incins. Slight change on the spread to Grimmsnarl here, 28 speed, that's an additional 3 speed. Basically, this was just to make it faster than a paralyzed Charizard. You know, a very niche situation, but it allows me to Spirit Break a paralyzed Charizard if that happens to be what's on the field. Not likely, given that Grimmsnarl is not part of my plan against Rinyasun, but, you know, it's, there are other Charizard teams, so, you know, it's just good to have. I'm not really giving up too much else, so I think it's fine. Zacian has a really interesting change. I changed Play Rough for Swords Dance, and the reason for this was because a lot of Pokemon are being EV'd to survive Play Rough now. Things like Zapdos, things like Kyogre, things like Gastrodon, all of these things are going to be EV'd to survive Play Rough anyway. So instead of hitting it with 2 Play Roughs, I could just Swords Dance and hit it with 1 Sacred Sword. Same amount of time being used on my part, but I also get a boost out of it. It also allows me to punish really, really slow plays on things like maybe the last turn of like a Trick Room or something where they're reading a Protect, going for an Incin switch to intimidate me while I Protect. No, I'm actually using Swords Dance. Things like that. Like, you can do a lot of cool little punishes. It's not very used, but I basically in practice figured, you know what, I'm not really missing Play Rough that much. There are games where Swords Dance can just win me the game for free, and I don't need Play Rough. The only matchup where that ever happens for Play Rough is Palkia Ice Rider, or Palkia Zacian, like Palkia matchup. But you're not usually in a position to hit it with a Play Rough, and it doesn't kill Dynamax Palkia anyway. So, you know, I figured Swords Dance was an okay call for this tournament. And then probably the biggest change was you might notice the difference on the Rillabooms here. This thing is Adamant with 36 speed. This bad boy is Min speed, Brave Nature, 0 speed IVs. I made this thing as slow as possible, and this was mostly because I realized I'm not leading it for Fake Out pressure very often, so I don't need it to be faster than opposing Incineroars for the Fake Out war. That's not how I use this Rillaboom. But with this variation, I underspeed Indeedee, because Indeedee is not really running min speed right now. People are running Modest, people are running a little bit more investment, so they're like, the Indeedee will lose the terrain war against this Rillaboom like 99% of the time, and if they are running min speed Indeedee, it's still a speed tie, so I can still win the terrain war. So really, really neat little change on Rillaboom there. I came up with this idea with Cortex, actually, for his Indeedee Dialga team. Obviously a niche pick that I'm not likely to hit, but it also works out really nicely for Indeedee Palkia. It allows me to do really, really cute stuff into a lot of the different teams. So overall, I liked this change a lot. It was also really interesting with the U-turn because it allowed me to move slower, which, for example, against things like an Incineroar, if I go U-turn and he goes Parting Shot, in Salt Lake City, it would usually be me switching then him switching, which gives him the ability to reposition later, knowing what my side of the board is going to look like. In this case, if he Parting Shots and I U-turn, he goes first, and then I know what he's going to have on the field, so I can then position accordingly. So very, very small changes to some of the lines that are beneficial in my favor. And it also just gave me a little bit more attack. There were a couple of things that were rolls, really niche situations as well. Things like if they had max defense, max HP, Mimikyu, and they intimidated me, I wasn't going to KO with max Overgrow or with a Drum Solo. This makes that roll a little more favorable. Things like that. Really minor stuff, but hey, I had the extra EVs, I might as well throw them into attack. I ran a lot of defensive calcs to see if they'd help me for that, but they basically didn't, so we put it into attack. So, 2 days of prep, 22 hours of running sets, running calcs, talking with people. I do need to give some specific shout-outs. I mentioned a couple of the people before, but especially extra large shout-out goes to Sableye for helping me with some of the spreads. I mean, I didn't really change many of the spreads, but basically we were considering some changes, and Sableye put a lot of time into running potential spreads and like figuring out the best way for me to run things like Ferrothorn, which I considered for the team. Even though they didn't see the light of day, he invested a lot of time in helping me prep, so he deserves a big shout out. Catfishy deserves an Omega shout out for running the same matchup with me for about 2 to 3 hours at least. He ran Rinia Sun with me non-stop, and that's got to get pretty boring for him. But we figured out great lines to it. I didn't lose to Rinia Sun a single time in Liverpool. That's my little spoiler. The work paid off a lot. You know, B. Smithy, Animus, Cortex, Jojo X9, Adi, so many people, Chalky, Turtlemania. There were a lot of people who ran sets with me for this tournament. And, yeah, I think, overall, it was a lot, but I think it was worth it. I didn't really feel burned out because it was only 2 days. Now, the trip was weird. It was fine. It wasn't direct, I don't think. Wait, yes, it was. Yes, it was. I flew in direct. No, I had a layover in Atlanta. That's right. So I slept on my flight to Atlanta. I flew out pretty late, but my flight from Atlanta to Manchester, I could not sleep at all. So already, you can tell we're getting into familiar territory here. There is a 1 hour train ride, or about 1.5 hour train ride from Manchester Airport to Liverpool. So I waited at the airport for about 45 minutes for my boy Pedons, a good friend of mine who's, you know, been a big help in things like front offices for draft leagues, and he's just been a guy who's helped me out in VGC for a long time. So it was kind of cool we were flying in around the same time. Also, he's flying in from the US. We were, I think, the only 2 people who traveled in from the US. I know Chef is American, but I think he lives in France. But yeah, so we landed around the same time, got a train together. Both of us were unable to check into our hotels because we got in too early, so that was fun. So we got some lunch. At this point, we're both super tired. I finally get into my hotel room at like 3. Meanwhile, I have only just changed my mind on the Rillaboom spread. I had a couple that I was thinking about, and I had to get on my plane. So I DM'd my friend Chalky, and I was like, Chalky, buddy, is there any chance that you could train a Rillaboom, like breed me a 0 IV speed Rillaboom? I do not have a 0 IV speed Rillaboom. Please, good sir, can you help me? And then trade it to me when I get there. So I'm there, desperately trying to make the trade work because my Switch won't connect to the hotel internet, and the hotspot is not strong enough on my free roaming plan. I have global free roaming, but it's really bad. So I tried for like an hour and a half. It didn't work. And I'm like, all right, my friend Wardy, shoutouts to Wardy, very good friend of mine from the StarCraft days. He showed up as well. He played in the Go tournament for fun. I was like, all right, I gotta wait for Wardy to get here and use his hotspot. Okay, Chalky, can you like be back in like an hour? Please get me the Rillaboom. I need it really badly. So shoutouts to Chalky for making that work. Wardy shows up. I end up napping for like an hour before Wardy shows up. I get the Rillaboom, and then Wardy and I hang out a bit. We hit the casino, which was nearby. Didn't go very well, which was great because you know, if I was lucky in the casino, I would have used up all of my RNG. So yeah, you know, yeah, it didn't go well. We lost a little bit of money. We weren't there for very long. Things were running bad, so we were like, whatever, we'll just leave. Got some dinner and headed back to the hotel. So about 11 o'clock, I'm like, you know what? I think my mistake was going to bed too early, that my body thought it was nap time in Salt Lake. So I'm going to go to bed a little later, go to bed at 11. We were allowed to wake up a little later for this one because check-in wasn't until an hour later than Salt Lake. So I was like, sleep time, cool. I woke up at 1 in the morning. So once again, I slept for 2 hours, and this time I didn't go back to bed. So, yeah. At this point, I am now going to the Liverpool event. I have barely slept. I have been awake for 8 hours. It is substantially worse than Salt Lake City. And I didn't really have that much time to chat with people. I was in line for the COVID checks with Greedent. Cool dude, awesome guy. Chatted with him a bunch and his girlfriend. Yeah, I just met a couple other people. Most of the people that I met up with later on in the day, or like on Sunday. But I was too tired to be social that day, and just had to be fully focused on the games, otherwise I was gonna fall asleep. So round 1, I sat down, and interestingly enough, so TCG hit the player cap for Liverpool, so did VGC, but TCG hit it first. So when I sat down, I was sitting for my round 1 around a bunch of people who all were TCG players who didn't get into the TCG tournament, so they decided to play in the VGC tournament. But I was playing against another Kyogre team, and this one was weird because I knew my opponent had told me prior to the match. They were like, all right, you know, I'm a bit of a one-trick. This is my friend's team, and I went into team preview and played myself. So I saw Kyogre and Whimsicott, and I was like, all right, I know what their one trick is. It's just gonna be Tailwind Water Spout. Then they led in Didi with Helping Hand. So they had Follow Me Water Spout, Helping Hand Water Spout. I wasn't ready for it, and I almost lost game 1. I ended up critting their Cinderace Max with Behemoth Blade, which sounds very lucky, but it didn't matter because in game 2 I noticed that they didn't have Dynamax candies, so it would have KO'd anyway. So the meme I was telling to my friends was like, yeah, I used all of my crit luck on critting a guy without Dynamax candies. But a very, very cool person. I did end up winning 2-0. And then I played Buenti in round 2, a notable player. Buenti also got top 16 at this tournament, so really, really well played tournament by Buenti. I did my coolest thing of the whole tournament. Game 1, I like to play Palkia Ice Rider very switch heavy, and it becomes very read heavy, but I'm very comfortable in that kind of a situation. Buenti got a very, very perfect turn read that won him the game straight up in game 1. So game 2, I played better. I just like went better into my reads and just played a little bit into the way he had played and ended up winning game 2. And then game 3, the leads were Amoonguss Palkia for him, and for me, Incin Grim. And I thought to myself, he's gonna think that he gets a free Spore Trick Room here. So what I did was I maxed my Grimmsnarl, max Starfalled the Palkia, KO'd it, and then Spore didn't do anything because we were on misty terrain. Best play I made all tournament. And then I lost because he crit my Zacian with a -2 Calyrex Ice, and then crit my Incin with a -2 Calyrex Ice, after which I was still in a position where I win the game. We were in Trick Room, so I was like, all right, I'm in a favorable position here. I need to use my Grimmsnarl to Thunder Wave my own Kyogre so that I don't get put to sleep, and then I can still win. And then I missed the Thunder Wave. So, actually, no, the Incin didn't get crit. What happened was, so yeah, he crit the Zacian, and then I calced that if I used Flare Blitz on the Amoonguss, it would put it into range for it to die to another attack, and I would not take enough recoil damage to die to the Calyrex. And then I crit the Amoonguss, which put me into kill range for the Calyrex. That's what it was. So my crit was terrible for me. It was dumb. It was very dumb and very tilting. So at this point, I'm half asleep. I go into round 3 against Ashley Rathall, who's running Rinya Sun, the matchup I've spent 5 hours prepping for, and I forget my leads and auto lose game 1. So at this point, I'm like staring into space during game 2, like, you know what? If I just lose here, I can just drop and like sleep, and that'd be great. I need sleep. This is just not worth it. I'm so tired. Anyway, this set was super dumb. We missed about 15 moves between the two of us. Both of us were just like missing everywhere. I won game 2. And then game 3, I had a game-winning Origin Pulse that missed, of course, on his Groudon, which allowed him to switch out the Groudon and like switch it back in like 6 more times to change the weather. And then because of that, I needed a lot of luck. I got very lucky after that. None of it would have mattered if I hit the Origin Pulse though, so I'm sitting there getting very frustrated about that. But then in the end, my win was that I used Hurricane in the Rain on the Groudon, which lived on like this much, got confused, and then hit itself. It was a dumb set. It was really dumb. So I win against them 2-1. And then we have a bit of a break. I don't, because I was the last one done. So not only am I exhausted on no sleep, I'm the last one finished with that set. So for me, everyone else was at a nice long break because our matches took forever. I'm right into the next one. I'm playing Benster, who is a very good player. But he's running the Life Orb Yveltal team that Animus was running. So I had so much prep against this as well. I ran it with Animus, I ran it with Adi, I think I ran it with Cortex. So this was my second most prep matchup. So I'm like, all right, let's go. And then in game 1, I realized the lines that we prepped aren't that great. Like, I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was the way he was playing the team, but his leads were the same. Like, the line we prepped didn't work. So I was like, all right, this is supposed to be a super easy win for me with this line. It's not working. So then I just maxed Ogre and won 2 games because I realized, hey, wait a minute. There's not really a great way on this team to kill a Solvest Kyogre behind a light screen. So I just did that, and I won 2-1. But yeah, it was really nice. I felt, even though the line didn't work, I felt really comfortable in that matchup because I knew what was on the Mons. I knew it was Life Orb Yveltal. I knew it was a Focus Sash Regieleki. I knew the Zacian set. I knew the Amoonguss set. It was, yeah, so I was very, very happy with that. And that got me my first win against, like, a really good player in that tournament, which was super nice. Then I played against Brian Zordani. I was so convinced I knew this name, and I don't know why. He said he took a break for like 2 to 3 years, so I have no reason to know who this person is, but I could have sworn I knew this name. They were running Rinnia-Sun. I ran my lines. I won 2-0. There wasn't really that much to say about this. The Rinnia-Sun lines, when they worked out, worked super well. So I won against Rinnia-Sun. Super nice. Then I played against Si Yao Feng. This guy's team. This was at 4-1. Keep that in mind. He was running Ho-Oh, Gastrodon, Groudon, Porygon 2, Incineroar, Venusaur, with 3 recovers and an Assault Vest Groudon. This guy... So, not only have I just spent round 3 being the last match done, obviously in this one I'm also the last match done. Game 1, I just kind of won. I noticed that if I just Dynamaxed after him, there wasn't really much he could do. My Kyogre kept forcing him to switch in Rillaboom. My Kyogre kept forcing him to switch in Gastrodon, and I just used that to position really well. I would use the obvious Gastrodon switches to switch my partner Pokemon into, like, Incineroar to just continually intimidate the Ho-Oh. So, they couldn't really dish out any damage, and I ended up winning game 1 on timer. Game 2, they adapted really well, and they won on timer because I could not kill a single Pokemon. They just spammed Recover and Intimidates, and I was really cocky game 2. I didn't think they had a win con, so I just kind of played it on autopilot and then could not kill anything. And then game 3, I just, I focused up and I won on timer. I think this was the match where it got to, like, the moment where, so I just clicked Thunderbolt into, like, Incin a bunch with my Zapdos, and then I was just trying to get chip damage because that was the problem in game 1. I couldn't kill anything, so I just decided to prioritize chip damage in the early game. And then suddenly it's like 3 minutes left, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'd better Dynamax something now. It's been 17 minutes, should probably use my Dynamax and then probably kill something. So I think I won like 4-3 or something dumb. It was really silly, but a really cool team. Super awesome that he managed to get that far. I don't know if he actually got CP, but still. Next, I played Mateus Demura, Solgaleo. Solgaleo Spectrier again. My most uncomfortable matchup with this team. Again, though, I don't think it's unfavorable. Game 1 was pretty clean. He didn't lead the Spectrier. He led Kyogre. No, he didn't. He led, that's right. He led Rillaboom, Porygon 2. That's why I have my notes. And because of that, I was able to just position in a way where he was never able to get the weakness policy on the Solgaleo, so I had no problem just getting rid of it and winning the game. Game 2, though, he led Spectre Solgaleo. And my game plan into that is to paralyze everything, starting with the Spectrier. Now, what he did is he actually protected the Solgaleo and used Snarl, which is a good read into what I was doing. My play's kind of obvious, but it's the safest one for me to do, and I'm up 1-0, so I figured I would just go for the line. Because of that, he was able to max his Solgaleo really late, but again, he wasn't really able to get the weakness policy because I was able to just position around it, and my own max didn't do much, but we ended up in an endgame situation where everything was paralyzed for him. His whole team was paralyzed. I was able to get rid of everything except the Solgaleo. The Solgaleo was at +1 defense with like 30%. I had a Rillaboom at 50% with no terrain. So I'm thinking, all right, I have to, if I would hammer him, it'll 2-hit KO. So I need a crit, a full paralysis, those are my outs. So I go for the Woodhammer, no crit, no full para. He clicks Psychic Fangs into my Rillaboom. I live on 2 and KO him the next turn, which is weird. It is a weaker move than Sunsteel Strike. So my first assumption was, oh, this was a really long game. He must have run out of Sunsteel Strike PP. But no, apparently he just forgot that they were not the same power and misclicked into me, and that's why he lost game 2, which is very sad. Mateus is like actually a very good player, but it was a long day. Stress got to him, and we got a 2-0 win. Win is a win. And then finally the win in against Filip Ichak. I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly. This match was funny because it wasn't actually a win in. Both of our resistance was so much higher than everybody else that apparently regardless of who won, we were both cutting. We didn't know that though. So he was running an AV Yveltal team with a Life Orb Regieleki. Really cool Yveldon team. He had Groudon obviously. Bronzong was on this team, Venusaur was on this team, and he actually used the Venusaur really, really well in this tournament against really, really good players. He beat Taran off the back of some Venu tech. He almost beat Eric Rios off the back of Venu. Like, he used the Venu really well in a time where Venusaur is non-existent in this meta, which was really cool to see. For our match, though, basically, game 1, I was able to win pretty easily. I think this matchup favors me a little bit. I won game 1. Game 2, he adjusted really, really well. And then game 3, I basically just went for a super YOLO move. I'd seen that his Regieleki was not super attack invested, like special attack invested. I don't think it was modest, and I don't think it was max special attack, even though it was Life Orb. I saw from the amount of damage it did to my Zapdos that in game 1 that I don't think it was strong enough to kill my Zacian. So what I did was I went for a max Airstream turn 1 with my Zapdos, and I switched my Zacian into the Max Lightning, knowing it would survive, and then be faster than the Regieleki and swept from there, which was a very risky play, maybe not the best play, but it worked, and I won 2-1. And yeah, that's the story of how I went 7-1 and top cut my first regional. But you would like to know what happened in the top cut. So I had to play against Chef, the other one of the other Americans in the bracket. The one who I believe lives in France, if I'm not mistaken. It went very poorly. He crit my Dynamax turn 1 in both of the games he won, and I won very easily in the game that I didn't get crit, but not really much I can do about that. All things considered, I mean, like, huge shoutouts to Chef. Like, he top cut with a Darm. That's, like, pretty sick. I thought his team was neat. I didn't think it had a matchup into me, though. It was a little unfortunate. I prepped. Shoutouts to Sven. Sven and I prepped for like 2 hours really early morning before that match, and we got every single move correct in our assessment. We basically figured what was going to happen in the games, and we got it 100% right. But, you know, the crits were just a little bit too strong. So getting your Dynamax crit turn 1 is really sad, especially when it happens twice. But overall, really, really happy with my Liverpool performance. Really thankful to everybody who helped me prep. I picked up another 100 CP from that. The CP bar that I have to go for is the North American one because that's where I live. I need 400 CP. I started the year with 33, and I'm officially at 193 now, and I should be +2 from the IC in March, but, you know, 2 doesn't really matter that much. But yeah, that's kind of where we are right now. I've really had a great time starting things out again, like being back live, doing really well at both events. The next one for me is going to be the X9 tournament in a week. From when I'm recording this, probably right around the time this goes live, actually. But yeah, so that's going to be fun. And then the next official tournament is EUIC. I was lucky enough to get a ticket for that, even though they sold out super quickly. My girlfriend actually booked my ticket while I was on the plane, so huge Omega shoutouts to her. And yeah, you know, I don't really know what my goal should be for EUIC because I've never been to an Internats. My goal for Liverpool, my goal for Salt Lake was to get CP. I did it. My goal for Liverpool was to cut. I did it. I think, so my thing, I think the goal is to make day 2, but I think that goal might be a little too low. But we're gonna go for it. We're gonna say day 2. That's the goal for EUIC. We'll see what team I bring. I don't know if I'm gonna build something new. I don't know if I'm just gonna adjust the current team. I love this team so much. I would love to just continue using it until it stops working for me. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be an amazing season. I'm halfway to Worlds. I'm super confident that I'm going to make it. And I'm really, really excited. I think it's going to be really, really awesome. And I'm going to a lot of events. So if you guys are coming to any of the events that I'm at, definitely come say hi. I'm going to every North American regional, and then maybe Milan. Like, at this point, probably not Milan. So Milan was my emergency one if I need points. But we'll see. And then also NAIC and EUIC. So it's gonna be cool. I'm so excited, man. This has been a really long, rambly video, but I just wanted to put this together and just kind of share my thoughts on how things have been going. This does kind of cut into my content creation a little bit, but I am going to be pivoting a little bit more towards VGC and Pokemon related stuff anyway, so hopefully you guys enjoy that. Hopefully you guys enjoy this. Let me know if this has been an interesting little video for you. If you'd like me to do more recaps like this, team reports that are more analytical or anything, just let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed it, drop a like. If you'd like to see more Pokemon content, including actual gameplay next time, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, and I will see you guys next time.